I think that because we've only got 1 hour, I think I will get started, and everybody will just keep coming in as we go along. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us for this really special session with our wonderful special guests. My name's Natalie Isaacs. I am the founder of 1 Million Women, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners from the land that I am speaking to you from today, the Darawal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. And I would love to ask my dear friend, dear Aunty B, for her special welcome to country. Aunty B, could you unmute?
There we go.
Sorry, folks, about that. I would like to, before I do welcome to country, just like to mention to everyone, look what we're doing. Just look what we're doing. I believe what we are doing today, along with all the other sessions around Australia, is we are about to help develop the biggest Australian history that I believe that I will experience. I'm 80, I just turned 80, and I know we've had a lot of changes made in this country, and I know we've had some referendums get through, but I believe that this is over and above, head and shoulders over what we are about to do, and so we're part of it. And I think that it's really important that we own that, name it and own it, and be proud about it. So I will welcome you to country. I acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians, the Gumbaynggirr peoples of this land where I live, work and play. I pay respect to my elders past, present and future. I pay tribute to my elders from the past because of how they stayed strong in culture, which shaped positive ways for my life and stories. I recognise present elders because of the wisdom that we hold. I accept elders of our future because of how they will lead us into a positive, self-determined, confident tomorrow. And I welcome all my brothers and sisters out there, all of you. Thank you.
You're on mute now, Natalie.
Thanks, Aunty B, so much for welcoming us once again with your beautiful words. And I'd like to just welcome everyone again, because there's more people that are joining as we speak. And I'd love to introduce my beautiful 1 Million Women team who are going to assist with us today. Brianna Kennedy, Ray, Brianna, Bree is going to co-host with me, and Jemima Pascoe, who will be helping with the chat and with all of your questions. And over to you, Bree.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming to you from, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And we just want to let you know that if you have any questions throughout the session, just pop them in the chat, and we'll hope to get to some of them at the end with our wonderful panel hosts. So yes, over to you, Nat.
So as Aunty B said before, what a moment that we are in. You know, what an opportunity for Australia to reset. We cannot change the past, but we can write a better future. And the gift of the Uluru Statement from the heart for all Australians and its call for a voice to Parliament is the start of that. To recognise and acknowledge our First Nations peoples in the Constitution is not just the right thing to do, it's an incredible opportunity for us all. You know, the voice to Parliament is an incredible opportunity for us to listen and to learn. And looking through this through the lens of climate, as you know, we do at 1 Million Women, the knowledge and experience of people who maintain this land for 65,000 years is vital. to understand that the lands and the oceans and the waterways are living systems, and to have the oldest civilization on earth in our constitution and at the table is an imperative for us all. So I'm really honoured to introduce our panel guests to you all today. The wonderful Aunty B. Ballangarry. She's a poet, an author, a Gumbaynggirr elder from the Mid-North Coast. She's my dear friend. She's a 1 Million Women ambassador. Aunty B is currently involved in circle work, and we've all at 1 Million Women have been touched by Aunty B's circle work, and it's beautiful, where she uses an ancient and supportive Indigenous model to work with all people to promote well-being, discovery, recovery, gratitude, and comfort. Thanks, Aunty B, for giving us your time. Thomas Mayo. Thomas is a signatory of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and has been a leading advocate since its inception in May 2017. He's the co-author of the Voice to Parliament Handbook, and he's the author of 6 published books, including Find Our Heart, a story about the Uluru Statement for young Australians. Thank you so much, Thomas, for being part of our panel today. Cathy Eatock. Cathy, is Cathy, I know Cathy was having some problems jumping on Zoom.
She'll be on in 10 minutes or so. She's just running down to another spot.
Down to another spot. So Cathy is currently the New South Wales Director of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Women's Alliance and chairperson of the Aboriginal Rights Coalition, which she established in response to the Northern Territory intervention in 2007. And she is currently organising the Pacific Climate Conference. And Dr. Chels Marshall. Chels is a leading Indigenous systems ecologist with extensive experience in marine ecology, cultural landscape management, and regenerative design. Chels, thank you so much for coming on. And I wanted to start off by just inviting you all to, to tell us a little bit about yourselves and why voting yes is so important. Aunty B, I'm going to throw to you to answer that question first.
Well, for me, thank you, Aunty. I've always felt that recognition has been and always will be very important to me. And just not being recognised for who we are, and that we can be part of a society where we have the same kind of access to whatever, whether it be to medical care, whether it be to learning institutions like schools, which I've experienced in my life, not having that proper good access to the state school. I had to go to a special little school which wasn't teaching me learning to read and write and to know and understand how society works, communities work. Not having access to that is not right. So not being recognised as a person to have those accesses. So for me, it's all about recognition. It's about respect. And it's about, at this stage, it's about reconciliation and acceptance. So, like for me, all across the board and all at different aspects of life, is why I'm voting yes, because I believe that if we can take care of all of those, they are a conversation that will lead to a better future.
Thanks, Aunty B. I'll throw over to Thomas now because Cathy's not here. So over to you, Thomas. Just tell us a bit about yourself and why yes is so important.
Thank you, Nat. Yeah, so I'm a Kororeg Kukugal Larrabumlay man, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. I live on Larrakia country. It's where I've always lived. I really believe in this because I was part of the process that led to it, and I understand the history that informs this moment on the 14th of October, when we'll all get a chance to respond to the invitation in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is to accept our voice as a form of recognition in the Constitution. I understand that we have tried many times before to have a voice, a national representative body to speak coherently, to speak in a way where it is genuinely driven from the grassroots. And I know that every time we've established a voice, that voice has been silenced. And so I understand that enshrining the voice in the Constitution is important to consistency, to us having a say in policies and laws that affect us, housing, health, education, employment. And then finally, the reason I support this is because I understand that is how to close the gap. And that's the vision here, to have a stronger, more equal Australia, where Indigenous people no longer have those disparities, where we enjoy things, just as Aunty said, the same as everyone else. And a voice is the key. You're on mute again, Nat.
Thanks, Thomas. And Chels, over to you.
I'll just test if I'm muted or not. Can you hear me? Awesome. Look, the doctor in my name comes from lots of work on obviously the ocean. That for Gumbaynggirr people, the ocean is our totem. And working in the space of regenerative design, working in wildlife behavior. My PhD was actually on Indigenous knowledge systems and climate change in the Pacific. And my angle probably comes a lot from fear of the future, particularly around climate change. And we haven't been able to meet our targets. We're still living in a space of uncertainty. We still have heavy reliance on government and that governance framework and system to help and push us through what we're all facing together. There's no one sector of people that isn't in this. We're all in it together, and I just think that it's time now that we have a look at other ways of knowing and doing things. And if those other ways of knowing and doing are looking at Indigenous knowledge systems and what Aboriginal people have to offer in Australia, we definitely should be going down that angle, because everything else that we're trying is not working. So we need to have a look at some new innovation in that space. And obviously I'm a mother. I have a child who's 14. I'm a teacher in my community. And I know that all of our children deserve a better future than what is outlaid at the moment. And if we start not having cohesive social constructs, we're looking at societal breakdown. So we need to have a look at some of these mechanisms right now that allow us to not leave anyone behind when we're moving forward, together, especially in Australia.
Yeah, I wanted to go to you now, Thomas. Thank you, Chels, for that, and Aunty B. And Thomas, you wrote this with Kerry O'Brien, and it's the Voice to Parliament Handbook. And it's so wonderfully detailed on how the Voice to Parliament will work. And can you share with everybody on the Zoom call, how you see the voice working, and also just a little bit more on what you were saying before about closing the gap. Can you just fill us in a bit more on that? You're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, so the voice is going to be key to closing the gap, because it will see representation on a national level that can take issues up that are common across all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Common issues like poor housing or crowded housing, common issue, and that affects health, so matters of health across all of our communities, infrastructure, just clean water in a lot of remote communities, roads that, you know, don't bust a tire every 3 months to take your kids to school, and education, you know, and justice as well, the way the justice system treats us, and our traumas and all those things that are carried on from many years of failed policy and harmful laws, but also the cruelties that have been done to our people since colonisation. So this is this national body will be able to take a holistic approach to those important policies. It will also see consistency by defending good programs and good policies that are working, and defending against injustices, such as an example is the Northern Territory intervention that came soon after the last real democratic strong voice of Indigenous peoples was silenced. That was the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. The intervention, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, rolled the Australian Army into those vulnerable communities in the Northern Territory in uniform. The Racial Discrimination Act Northern Territory was suspended to do this. That's just how, you know, terrible this was, how, you know, it was an attack really on Indigenous people, not just in the Northern Territory, but all around the country. And we didn't have a voice, you know, strong enough and united enough to really stand against that and help Australians understand that it would be a poor decision. And so also the voice would not only defend against such harmful decisions, but promote policies that are working, programs that are working. I've said consistency a few times because, you know, we see programs that are achieving great outcomes that are just crossed out anytime there's a change of government, just removed at a political whim. And so this voice is going to be important to consistency, and that's going to be really important. But I want to add on to what Dr. Chelsea was saying, you know, really important. This isn't only about deficit. You know, this is also about what Indigenous people can share. We have a wonderful culture. We had advanced societies here. We were the masters of making peace, of dispute resolution. You know, Makarrata is just one Aboriginal word for a process of agreement making or coming together after a struggle. And I too am fearful of the future. We see, you know, El Nino. We see, you know, the country drying out really fast right now, heating up. We can feel and see those changes now, right? All of us can. And I think we have so much to contribute as the custodians of these lands. You know, we give voice also to the waters and, you know, our estuaries and our country in decision making, and that's so vital right now.
Yeah, it's such what an extraordinary opportunity this would be, you know, to be able to listen and learn from the wisdom of First Nations peoples.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Thomas, for that. And the next question we want to direct towards Aunty B. You were telling us the other day about how you went through the 1967 referendum, and how do you see the voice today and now bringing about long-lasting change and really benefiting Indigenous communities?
I think by being in, thank you for that question. I think by being included, am I on mute? I'm just looking.
You're okay.
Oh, we could hear you, Aunty. We could hear you. You're on mute now, though. You're on mute now. Press the button again.
Yeah, just press the button again.
There we go.
Should you speak?
Thank you.
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
My newest thing is technology, and I always think that I'm a whiz at technology, but it doesn't always work, and it doesn't always work at crucial moments. Back to the question. What I think is going to be different with having a voice now is an easier conversation, because I believe that story, if we've got story included in a conversation, then we're going to understand things more. And I do believe that it's a two-way thing, this understanding. So the 1967 referendum, for me, I didn't have the full knowledge of what it was, what a referendum was to start with. I didn't understand that to vote yes meant that I could be included. But I learned that once I was included, then the next thing that I automatically felt was it wasn't put into the Constitution. So to me, it was like a half job. So to me, it felt like, okay, well, I'm counted in the consensus, but it's my voice is not in the Constitution, so it's not going to be permanent. It's not going to be a permanent thing at the table. So whenever I get to speak, it's just going to go to nowhere land. And I think that in the way that I believe that if we've got a better conversation between each other and the dialogue is opened up for all of us to keep speaking all the time. I have a saying with my circle work that when we feel that it's natural to speak into an issue and to be able to get other people to understand that issue while we're speaking, if it's an easy speak, it just flows out and everyone understands us and we can respond or so. But I believe the same thing will happen with a conversation now. Once we can understand each other and bring story into the thing, it will come out natural. A natural conversation will happen between us all, and other people, and I'm saying non-Aboriginal folks, will get to understand our ways. We have a way of being. I know that my way of being is different to others, and of course we have to all be different. We're unique, but the thing is we have to be accepting of other people, be accepting of what we need. And overcrowded houses, like if we have overcrowding of houses, sometimes I see a difference in families sometimes need to be together in a house for a time, but straight away we are mixed up in the story, and then we're automatically classed that we're overcrowding a situation, and it's misunderstood. But at the same time that I say that, overcrowding is a problem. So not to mix up the two. I would like to see better understanding of the way that education, we have such knowledge, our ways of understanding, our concept of ownership of land, our way of speaking to each other, sometimes speaking without even opening our mouths. So I just think that, you know, once we get the yes through, it'll open up a place for what we say to be more acceptable to other people, and then there'll be no fear between the conversations between each other. And that's my understanding. And it all has to start somewhere. It starts at the kitchen table, if you like, you know, and once we're at the kitchen table, we speak freely and we speak easy, and it just flows out what we need. And if we have that chance, I believe that all of our First Nations people will be able to speak to each other too, and be able to share what really is important for us as a whole, right across the board. And it will open up a pathway towards those places like access to education, access to medical care, access to being included in and asking us for opinions on things. And so if we have that chance and it's done willingly, we can be open to it, and we are open to it. I believe we are open to it because we're storytellers and we'll start with story. So, I mean, I don't know if you would like me to go on more, but that's my belief, that's my beginning. Open the conversation up, and I believe that that's what will happen, which will be better for our First Nations people once yes gets in.
Thank you so much, Aunty B. Chels, or Thomas, did you want to add anything to that question before we move on to the next?
No, Aunty B covered it perfectly from my end. Yeah, well done.
It's a long road since 1967, hey Aunty B, and when you know, the other week when you sat with us and talked to us about you in that moment in 1967? I think you were 34.
20, I was 24.
Yeah,
24. I was 24 with a 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything more about that moment?
I do believe that a better understanding of political processes and political history. I mean, if we have a better way of understanding our political history and be able to join up what's important in our community and society and Australia as a whole, then, and it has to start in the schools. Yeah, I mean, I do know that young people are way more aware of this referendum that we're in at the moment, a lot more than I was back then. So my thing is, what I wasn't aware of back then was detriment to my process. I did say yes, and I did know that I was in the census, but I didn't know that it wasn't making a full sense until the voting was over, and here I am in the consensus, but also knowing that it's not really counted until later. So I believe that from that experience to now, more political history, more politics, and it's great for me to see, younger than me, people like you, Thomas, and you, Chels, in our midst. I know you people, and so therefore I feel really proud to be able to move on and trust my future as far as your voice and my voice out in, but I believe that a lot more work could be put into schools to make politics easier and bring it more story rather than have it like a language that we don't understand. I don't know. That's just my thoughts, Nat. It could be easier way to understand the political processes in our country.
Well, Aunty B, you are an incredible storyteller, and what you have taught me over the years, you have changed my life, and what you have taught me about the land and how to connect, and it's just incredible. Thank you. And I wanted to ask you, Chels, because we've got nearly 200 people on this call, and how do we respond to to people when they voice their concerns? How do we talk to those people that are sitting on the fence and that are confused? Because and there's a lot. The other day I was walking down the street and somebody stopped me and saw my badge and said, "Oh, that's great, you're voting yes." And she said to me that I want to vote yes, but I think I'm going to vote no because there's just not enough detail. How do we pull people out of that? Of course I talk to her, but it's just I don't know the details, so I'll vote no.
Yeah. I think people are looking for detail. And obviously when you're looking at a voice to Parliament, the detail comes with Aboriginal people in that. It's not up to the current predominant non-Indigenous government ministers to be making those decisions or even speak on those, because that's the whole intent of the voice, is that it will be Aboriginal people having that say on how the things that affect us will be dealt with. So I got told the other day that the document behind the voice is something like, Thomas, you might be able to help me on this, but it's something like a document that's between 250 and 500 pages long. So there's detail there. There's when you hear other government officials saying that we have no detail, we don't know how it's going to work. It's like, well, that's essentially up to Aboriginal people to work how that works. There's so much information out there. I think the primary thing that I think I said this to you before, Nat. I talk to my cousins when they come up to me, or people in the street. Yeah, and they're saying, oh, well, I don't know what to do. It's like, well, why don't you just look at what's ethical? Yeah, why don't we have a look at that? And when you start to look at what's ethical, I put it in the sense of, well, at the moment, Aboriginal people actually, when you look at a landmass of Australia, we own more than 50% of Australia. So more than 50% of Australia is actually owned by Aboriginal people. And the other thing is Aboriginal people do have rights in Australia. Australia has signed, international conventions. Australia has signed, a lot of agreements that, we have rights. So that's the next thing that a lot of people are uneducated and don't know about. But when you look at Australia's landmass, Aboriginal people actually own, a large majority. And I put it to people like, okay, and it's more than 50%. So if you and I, let's say we bought a car together, a nice car, and you never let me drive that car. That's essentially how it is. The other way is that, you and I went and we own halves in a house, but you never let me in the house, and you never let me make any decisions on how that house is managed or what happens, color of the walls or anything in that house. So that, in a sense, it's unethical. And, if that happened in any other space, everyone would say that's really wrong. So, I just apply that same thing to people in the streets. Like, you need to reach in and you need to find what's ethical, and the principles in yourself about what's right and what's wrong. And that's what it comes down to. It just comes down to a decision of what's right and what's wrong. And if you think that, where a people own half of Australia and have no say in how Australia is guided, managed, or advised on, if you think that's right, well, you would vote, no. But if you think that's wrong, you would vote yes. There's a whole other factors behind that as well. And, a lot of that comes around the process of, it's primarily, we, yes, I know, I've seen that in the chat. But, it's down to this point of like, well, the other side of the coin is that Aboriginal people have so much to offer. I know all you guys are in this space because of climate change. You're 1 million women that are concerned about climate. When you have a look at our biobanks in Australia, so our biobanks are essentially all our protected areas. So you even look at that since 1996, when the native title legislation came out, and we all remember, it wasn't that far ago, we all remember the hype and the hoo-ha that happened around native title. Aboriginal people are going to take our land, Aboriginal people are going to lock us up. I'll tell you now that 50% of Australia's biobanks, or more than 50% of Australia's biobanks since 1996, are now Indigenous protected areas. So Aboriginal people actually contribute something like 84% of Australia's land mass in conservation. And those areas are primarily the parcels of land that came out of native title and out of native title legislation. So those areas at the moment, along with our non-government organisations and non-government owned lands, they make up 95% of our biobanks. So these are our biobanks that are basically assisting to help biodiversity loss. They're assisting to help species decline, and they're assisting in providing fresh air that we need to breathe and to battle climate change. And all these parcels, and they're also helping to meet our 30 by 30 targets, primarily owned by Aboriginal people. 50% of them are Aboriginal owned lands. So we have a lot to contribute, in how we move forward in this country. And, if the majority don't let the majority have that voice and have that say, to me, it's shame.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chels. And I think we're definitely aware of how much we can learn from Indigenous culture in terms of looking after the environment and climate, which is, our focus.
It's not so much about what we can learn, it's actually what Aboriginal people are contributing now.
Yeah.
We are contributing to nearly every single climate change target in Australia in a massive way, more than the Australian government.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say hello to Cathy as well, who could finally join us. Because we went around before and everyone got their minute, did you want to say, introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself and why voting yes is so important?
Thank you so much, and my apologies for those technical issues. My apologies as well to Bea and the Aunty Bea and the other panellists. I want to also thank you for the opportunity to contribute to these discussions. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm a Guyri and Butchulla woman. My mob's country is in central Queensland, and I was raised in Sydney before travelling to Canberra, where my mother was involved with the Aboriginal Embassy. I heard Aunty Bea mentioning Uncle Gary Williams earlier, who was also involved in that. So that experience of rights advocacy has really stayed with me. I was the National Secretary for the Committee to Defend Black Rights that successfully campaigned for the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, and that was announced following our chairperson, Helen Corbett, raising it at the United Nations and raising the issue of deaths in custody. So that sparked my interest in using international mechanisms to assert our rights. I've been a documentary filmmaker and then also senior policy officer in Aboriginal affairs for 10 years, where I provided advice on a whole wide range of issues impacting Aboriginal communities. While I was there, I always sought community views. However, I did see the limitations of that individual approach that I took and the lack of more formal consultation processes of government. I moved back to the community sector and was CEO of Gumbaynggirr Aboriginal Women's Centre in Redfern. So there I actually saw the challenges of community organisations in meeting the huge needs of Aboriginal communities and the extremely limited funding that they try and do that with. So I've been attending UN sessions on Aboriginal rights since 2011 and was elected chair of the Indigenous Peoples Organisation in 2016, which I still hold. That body's moved from a voluntary body to a fully funded national Indigenous rights advocacy body. In 2022, I was elected the Pacific member to the facilitative working group of the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples platform. So that's the main avenue for Indigenous input into the UNFCCC climate change processes. So I've been around Aboriginal rights for a long time, and I'm aware how Australia has too often failed to meet these minimum standards, minimum globally accepted standards. I'm also acutely aware of the huge difference that having a say through the voice would have on the outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. So that's just a very brief outline. I think the opportunities that the voice provides is the need that we need to highlight the need for just treatment for the First Nations peoples of this country and the benefits that the voice will provide in informing government on the policies and legislations that are actually impacting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. And for those that know voters, I would say that that process will actually save a significant amount of money, taxpayers' dollars, in being more effective in those approaches for communities. I know there's also been concern raised about possible divisions that this may supposedly raise in the community. However, it's quite clear if you look at the rate of deaths in custody or the closing the gap targets that division already exists. We have overcrowding in remote communities where up to 20 people in a home isn't uncommon to see. The intention of the voice is to help address that divide. It's actually misinformation from the No campaign that has sought to promote divisions in the community, suggesting Aboriginal people gain more than others. I actually heard on a national radio program, driving back from my father's, the radio announcer, this wasn't a caller, this was the radio the radio journalist, saying that there would be a $400 tax against every non-Indigenous person, a $400 sovereignty tax if the yes got up. So that level of misinformation and blatant lies, it's akin to the allegations that people would lose their backyard that was pandered around with the Mabo case. The fact that people lower themselves to that level of misinformation is really concerning. But in terms of any possible division, it's actually coming, I think, from the No campaign. The voice is actually intending to bring the community together to try and address some of those inherent inequities that Aboriginal communities face. So I think it's really critical that people get behind the voice and vote yes and support the representative model that has been set out through the Tom Calma Marcia Langton report. The government has already committed that it will be an elected representative body. And in terms of the people suggesting that there's a lack of information, the body itself will be established by Parliament. They're the elected representatives in a democratic system, so they will develop the details of the format of the voice. But we do know it will be an elected representative body, so it will provide a voice to communities across Australia. So, you know, I just really can't understand why people wouldn't get behind and support and help address some of these really serious inherent inequities that our communities are facing. And thank you so much for organising this webinar and the time for us to contribute and consider some of these issues. Thank you
so much, Cathy, for sharing all that with us. And I know I just saw a question in the chat saying, you know, we need to keep our spirits up. How many people we've got? Nearly 200. We're at peak of people on this call today. And but going to that question and throwing it over to all of you, you know, as you say, Cathy, we've got a few weeks. We've got 3 weeks to go. So what can everybody on this call, you know, what should we, like, what can we do to support the voice between now and the referendum voting day that will make a huge difference? You know, we've got to get people that are sitting on the fence off that fence to say yes. And if there is, just if I can squeeze another question in, if you can you share when you have moved someone from a no vote to a yes, so that we've got those tools to take away from it with us today. Aunty B, I'll throw to you first.
I really do believe it all starts with respect. You know, starting with respect when someone's on the fence, it's not up to me to push another person or to influence or coerce. But my body language and my excitement about going into a yes and finally we're going to get it together as a full nation of people, all of us together, we're all going to be on the same page in the Constitution, out in the streets. I'm going to show my excitement about the history we've just all come through and all what we are participating in on the Zoom at different sessions. And I believe my excitement personally can reach out to a group, and then the group reaches out to community. So, you know, from little things, big things grow if we just keep promoting how excited we are to finally get it together.
Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful, Aunty B. So this is what it goes to the detail question firstly. People talking about the detail, help them to understand that this is a principle that we're voting on, okay? Because our constitution is only the size of a passport. It's just got dot points, okay? So what we are saying yes or no to, so say this to people, what you are saying yes or no to, this is the detail, is the principle of recognising Indigenous people, so recognition and giving them a voice to speak on matters that affect them, okay? So recognition and listening. That is what we are saying yes or no to. Secondly, to the fear-mongering. If you listen to people and their objection is the fear of losing something, then cut through that by pointing out to them that what we are establishing here is an advisory committee. It can only decide what advice it gives to the Parliament and the government. It cannot force any laws through. It cannot force policies. It does not decide where funding goes. It cannot tax anybody, you know, charge rent or take your backyard, remind them of all that fear-mongering that has happened before, remind them of the same-sex marriage plebiscite, you know, and the fear-mongering that happened there as well. None of those things that they were saying came to pass. This is simply an advisory committee. Finally, the contrast. You know, that yes is doing something different. It makes a better future for Indigenous children possible. And everything else has failed. So yes is about hope. Yes is about change in Indigenous affairs. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain from saying yes. Whereas no is more of the same. More of the same waste, more of the same failures. The gap continued to widen as it did again this year in some of the measures. So there is a great contrast between yes or no. What you vote in this has a great consequence. It can either be positive or it can be more of the same, which is negative. So that would be my pitch to people in a nutshell.
Yeah, beautiful, Thomas. We are running out of time, and Chels, do you want to throw in there, and then we'll get a couple of questions in before we then we'll just go as fast as we can to get as many questions as we can in. But Chels, yes, could you just tell us your feelings on that?
Oh, look, I agree. You know, with everyone that's on the panel and what's being said. I think the thing for me is that our voice has always been there. I'm a Aboriginal scientist that has always given advice to government. The difference in this is that those agencies have always been, decommissioned, taken away, dissolved by the different government departments coming into power. This puts it in the Constitution so that cannot, be the case. So any incoming government, any incoming Prime Minister, cannot take that away. And that's been the past and the history for Australia and Aboriginal people's advice and advisory bodies. So it's really nothing new in that sense. The only thing new about it is that for some people that don't know these things and don't know Australia's history in that context, it's new. So anything that's new tends to be a bit scary. brother there, Thomas, gave a perfect example, and I talked earlier about the fear-mongering, the anxiety around native title. And I gave you an example of look at the outcomes of that now. Look at the outcomes since 1996 that's happened from that. It's all been positive, nothing but positive. So, for me, people said to me, okay, what if it is no? And it's like, well, we live in no, so we'll still be living in no. It'll still be struggle street. It'll still be me. You're heavily worried about all the young Indigenous people I work with in community. That gap will get wider and wider. And I say to people, I'm fifth generation living without grandparents. I haven't had that privilege of having grandparents. So that is a perfect example of the health. So for me, I hear my daughter, struggle at school, and I don't think that's fair. So for me, it's about, more so a vote from the heart, what you see around, what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, and that's it. Hey, Chelsea, it's a vote from the heart. And Aunty B, something you said the other day, it's really simple, folks. Just vote yes. And we've got a few questions. I don't know, we haven't got that much time, but we promised to try to get to the questions over the coming week. But Bree, is there something that jumps out that we can ask the panel? I see, where do we get? Thomas, does anyone know where we get the handbook?
Yeah, you're asking me, sorry, Nat. Yeah, it's available at all bookshops, including online bookstores. And half of the royalties, author royalties, go to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. We never expected it to do so well, but we're really glad we wrote it, Kerry and I, because we've heard that it has changed many minds when people struggle to have the conversation and they just say, here, take this book and read it. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
It's at the Ballangarry Writers Festival the other week, and you were speaking and Kerry was speaking, the room was full, and that queue outside the bookstores for picking up this book was very long, Thomas. It was really good, and I've read it. It's brilliant. Please grab a copy, give it to somebody that is on the fence. It's a really quick and easy read and explains so beautifully why yes is the only vote. Bree, any other questions?
Yeah, so someone says, are you able to shed some light on representatives of voice and how that will be selected if yes does go through?
Yeah, I can do that one if you like, briefly. So again, we're voting on the principle. Should there be recognition and should there be a voice? Yes or no to that. Once that is established, then the government will run a process of going to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities around the country. They'll consult with us on that. They'll develop a bill, the model from those consultations, and then it'll go through Parliament. And away we go. So Dr. Chelsea there talked about the voice co-design report. It's a great example to see how the model might work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And someone else said, where did it go? I would really like a way to respond when people claim it will be too hard to get a group that represents all Indigenous people in Australia. What would you say to that, I guess? Or how would you counteract when someone on the fence is sort of saying that?
Would you like me to do that one, panel, or Doc?
Oh, look, I'll have 2 cents in there, bro.
Okay.
I actually responded in the chat to say that, I'll admit I'm an avid listener to Parliament Time. And, some of the crap that goes on there and how long it takes current legislation and laws to go through that lower house and upper house is quite extensive and lengthy as well. So I don't think there's any comparative there. And you need to consider that, more than 80% of Aboriginal Indigenous people in Australia at the moment are voting yes. So that is a majority that is moving in that direction. And, each nation has their representatives. And, those representatives are the ones that, will come together, I'm presuming, because that's how we normally function and process in those sort of decision-making processes at the moment. So Aboriginal people already have our own sort of decision-making processes within community, but then also within national and state forums. So, that's to me is a non-issue. And when you start doing the comparative, you have exactly the same thing of representatives in Parliament that are representing different communities and different components of the country as well. So, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And, I think that is sort of, not much of a, argument or something to insert in there, because that's how our system operates at the moment. Sorry, Thomas, you want to add to that?
No, perfect. No, yeah, spot on. We're like anyone else. We can have disagreements, but when we have a voice, we're able to have informed debate and discussion and reach consensus regularly.
So we're running out of time, and because it's almost 1 o'clock, and I hope everyone can just stay on for another 6 or 7 minutes. That would be really wonderful, because I would really like to take a moment to ask Thomas if he would recite the Uluru Statement from the heart, and that you are a signatory to, and it would be a gift to us if you could recite that for us now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did, according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion, the ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom, remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished, and it coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise? That a peoples possessed the land for 60 millennia, and this sacred link should disappear from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionately, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alien from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish, they will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
You're muted now.
Everyone, I would love you in the chat. I invite you to share with us all, with these 4 incredible First Nation leaders. Why are you saying yes? Please share in the chat, and we can all read together why we are saying yes.
Thank you.
While people are doing that, I just want to also give a big shout out and a big thanks to you, Nat. Thank you for bringing the forum together and giving us the space to also have a yarn with your members and with people. And to everyone that's still online, keep up the good work. You're doing a great job. And power and peace out.
Yeah. Spot on.
Aunty B, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to say to you, Nat, thank you for trusting me to join in today's discussion. And it's been a real privilege to be sharing the screen with you, Cathy, and you, Thomas, and Chels, Bree, and Jemima, and yourself, Nat. And I have seen on the screen some people that I recognise from my local community, and thank you so much for being there. I'm more grateful to you, Nat, that you keep including me in as an ambassador for 1 Million Women to be part of whatever it is that we're, looking forward to, as far as better futures and connectedness and respect for each other. I love that you always include me in these discussions. I think it's a good way forwards. And I believe story. I always believe story. It's at the beginning of any discussion, even if it's a political discussion. I think that if it's done around the kitchen table first, it's way to go.
Thanks, Aunty B.
Thank you, everyone.
Cathy?
Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Aunty B, Thomas, Chels, Bree, everybody on the panel. I just, really appreciate the opportunity to speak on these. It is really critical for our communities. It will make a huge difference on the ground. They are regionally elected representatives that will be on The Voice. So the idea of not addressing the diversity of Aboriginal communities just isn't true. Those communities will nominate who is on The Voice. Supporting The Voice will really help address that existing marginalisation in Aboriginal communities. It's no threat to the mainstream community. It will only help address that disparity. So we really encourage each of you to get out, speak to your friends, speak to those family members or community members who may have reservations and address their concerns. It will be developed through Parliament. This is just a fundamental principle to support the First Nations peoples to overcome the existing marginalisation. And you'd have to be blind not to see that that's currently does exist. So thank you for the opportunity, and let's look forward to some positive change.
Thank you. Thank you so much, panel guests. And thank you everyone for being with us. So let's get this done. Let's get this done. Only yes moves us forward. Let's wake up on the 15th of October to yes and feel the depth and energy and momentum of that for our country. Let's do all we can over the next 3 weeks and talk to those still on the fence. Our constitution must evolve. We need to be a country that recognises 65,000 years of Indigenous culture. Not every generation gets the chance to change history, but we do, all of us, young and old, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, arm in arm together. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you, everyone.
You. Thank you,
Bree.
everyone. Bye.
Bye, Cathy. Thank you, Bree. Thank you, Jem. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Aunty B.
Thank you, darling. Nat, I'll talk to you later on. Thank you, Jemima. See you. Talk to you
Good
soon.
luck for this afternoon or for this evening. I hope it's fabulous and that you get a chance to rest and yeah, just enjoy your time afterwards.
I will. Thank you, Bree. Thank you for
Thank
your.
you so much.
I'll talk to you both. I'll talk to you, 1 million women, gorgeous women, on the other side of tonight.
On the other side of tonight. Okay.
I go soon. I've got Chris is here with me. Chris, can you see Chris? Let me see. She's waving to you. Chris is here.
I'm a member. I donate.
So we are ready to I'll leave now. I'll go off now, and thank you for your support. Really big time, you know, really grateful for what you do, even though I was really anxious when I first came in this morning, you know, to start talking, because I don't talk at that political level. It's more like from grassroots where I come from, but I can see how it all is together, connected together. Love it. I really love it. I love being part of 1 million women, and I love your support.
We love you.
So I'm going to leave now. Bye for now.
Bye, Aunty B. Bye-bye, everybody. Six people in the waiting room.
I'm just going to put that in. All right. People really linger sometimes.